Fans, teachhoops.com/816 basketball has all the resources that you need to be a better coach, period. Today's basketball coaches are dedicated, year-round workers who face fierce competition to keep their jobs. And excellent instruction is out there, but finding it is inconvenient, unorganized, and it can be hit or miss. So visit teachhoops.com/816 basketball. Sign up for the free trial. You're going to want to go past that free trial. We guarantee it. And be sure to join our good friend Billy Kegler on the Competitive Mindset podcast, where guests share how they differentiate themselves and achieve high levels of performance through the lens of motivation, competitiveness, and mindset. Join along on the journey to lifelong learning and improved performance with the Competitive Mindset podcast. Follow on social media at Competitive Pod. Hello and welcome to the Greatest Games podcast, brought to you by 816 Basketball. I'm one of your hosts, Brian Rosefield, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris de Blasio.
Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be here as always on the Greatest Games podcast, a chance for us to catch up with basketball coaches from around the country and have them tell us about their greatest game. As always, it can be their time as a JV coach, a high school coach, a college coach, or just if they've been coaching for half a century.
And a half a century, and maybe if they have over 1,100 wins, and maybe it could be somebody that's been to the NCAA tournament 30 plus times, or maybe somebody that has 37, 20 plus win seasons. You know, who knows? You never know who we're going to have on the Greatest Game podcast. But I tell you what, those stats are applying to our guest today. He's the Jefferson University head men's basketball coach, Herb Magee. Welcome to the Greatest Games podcast. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, and I appreciate your introduction, to be honest.
Well, Coach, normally off the top here, we have someone give us their resume about all the stops they've had, but you've really only had one stop.
Yeah, I started as a student athlete at a place called Philadelphia Textile, and I've been there ever since. I was a freshman in 1959. And I've been there ever since. 4 years as a student athlete, 4 years as an assistant coach, and the past 53 years as the head coach. So we've gone through a number of name changes. We became the Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science. We became Philadelphia University. We became Jefferson University, and now we are Thomas Jefferson University. So go ahead.
Sorry, I have one quick question about that. Do you still have any T-shirts that say Philadelphia Textile?
Yes, I do, and you can't have it. I have one, and it's like Jerry Seinfeld says on his show, men wear their T-shirts till they evaporate.
Yes,
so,
Golden Boy.
Yeah, exactly right, Golden Boy. He didn't make it to the last wash. So I have one that I wear when I get down the shore in the summer, and I have one Philadelphia University, and I have a bunch that say Jefferson and Thomas Jefferson. So that's all I own is stuff that people give me.
I love that. And Chris, I've got to tell you, I'm going to love this conversation, Coach. I'm going to love talking to you. You just kind of glossed over your playing career and did not even mention, I believe it was the 61-62 season. Am I right in saying that you scored 2,235 points in a season? Is that correct?
No, that's my career.
Okay,
yeah.
But still unbelievable playing career.
Yeah,
and if I'm also correct, we're drafted by the Celtics. Is that correct?
That is correct. I was drafted in the 7th round. They used to have 7 rounds back then because they only had 8 teams. So I was like the 65th or 62nd guy taken in the draft by the Boston Celtics.
I just talk about that. Now, again, some people, younger listeners might not know, the Boston Celtics, 1961-60, that was it. They were the team in the NBA. Even as the 7th round pick, talk about what it meant when you eventually got a phone call from the Celtics that they selected you.
Yeah, it was really exciting because I'm a longtime NBA basketball fan, grew up a fan of the Philadelphia Warriors, Wilt Chamberlain, Paul Arizin, Tom Gola, etc. And went to a lot of games, and especially back then, you played the same teams a lot because there was only 8 teams in the whole league. So to get drafted by them was really exciting. I didn't try out because I had broken 2 fingers on my right hand right before tryouts is concerned. And I use that now as not only the truth, but also as an excuse that I didn't make the Boston Celtics team. Because at the time, the Boston Celtics had Sam Jones and Casey Jones, Bob Cousy and Bill Sharman, and John Havlicek. And all 5 guys are in the Hall of Fame. So to make that team probably would have been pretty close to impossible. But just to be drafted was quite a thrill.
Well, so you just missed out behind 5 Hall of Famers. There's no shame in that, right?
Exactly. And to be honest with you, I took a job coaching as an assistant. And if I had made the Celtics, I probably would have made, you won't believe this, probably about the same amount of money. It was like $5,000-$6,000 that rookies were getting it back then in the NBA, unless you were like the top pick. So it wasn't like it is now, free agency, long-term contracts, and so on.
I believe
Paul Harrison became a good friend and was a good friend and told me that when the Warriors moved to San Francisco, he had to quit because he couldn't afford to go because he had such a good job with IBM in the city of Philadelphia.
Wow. And Paul Harrison, one of the forgotten early greats of the NBA in the 50s. Tremendous player. I believe it was Jim Boeheim I heard on a interview a couple years ago. When he first started as an assistant coach at Syracuse after he had finished playing there, he didn't get paid as the assistant coach. He got to stay in the dorm, and he was the golf coach, and he got like $2,000 for the year as the golf coach and got to live in the dorm where the football players were because Tom Coughlin was on the Syracuse football team, and Boeheim was in charge of the dorm that Coughlin was in.
Interesting. Well, my job, when I got hired, we had a JV team, and I was going to be the JV coach. But also at the same time, they made me the cross-country coach. I ended up being cross-country and tennis coach. I coached the golf team for a few years, and I taught some phys ed classes like golf, tennis, racquetball, et cetera, et cetera. So jack of all trades, really, what my job was, and I was really thrilled to get it.
Well, you're talking to a former cross country coach that knew nothing about cross country. Same type deal, coaching basketball. Yeah. Hey, can you coach cross country? Yeah, you know it. How about track? You got it. Golf, absolutely. We'll jump in whatever I can do to hang on and coach some basketball.
Job, sure, exactly. So my practice with them was I ran with them.
There you go.
So that's what we did. Yeah. So it was great. I enjoyed it.
I long for the days of cross country practice where I can go out and run. I need to exercise, Coach. We'll talk about off the air. But Coach, you've been at it for a while, and so one question I've been wanting to ask you is, the game has changed a bunch, and the world has changed a bunch. But for you, for coaching, what are some of the beliefs that maybe you started out with that have just completely changed after 50 some odd years?
Well, I was one of those guys. If I had a lead at the end of the game, 5-6 minutes to go, I'm sitting. I was a big fan of Dean Smith as a basketball coach when he came up with the 4 corners. And, we would do it. We would do it and sit on the ball. And if you had to get it from us, you had to foul us. So some of our scores were low. So then when they changed the rule with the shot clock, I wasn't real happy about that to start off with. I understood it, but to be honest with you, I felt it cost me a couple games when it first came out. Because I'm ready to sit on the ball if we got the lead at the end of the game. So one of the changes was that. The one change that came in right away and I loved was the three-point shot. I would have loved to have played with the three-point shot when I played. But the three-point shot, I think, really changed the game. And now they keep moving it back, and I think it's a good thing. They're talking about freedom of movement in the lane and around the key area, and I think it's really worked out fine. And I think the three-point shot keeps you in a lot of games and can spread you out if you got a decent lead. And if you're down a bunch, you can always come back. Three-point shot and the 30-second clock, the game's never over.
Yeah, the comeback part with the three-point shot is so true. You're always in a game with the three-point shot.
Absolutely.
Coach, I want to know what happened in 1973-74. You only went 10-14. I mean, come on, that's just – we can't have that. I mean,
no. What happened there was we had a problem, and I had to discipline 3 starters. Unfortunately, all 3 terrific guys, but they made the big mistake as far as what they did. And if you're a coach and if you have rules, you got to stick by them. And they violated the rules and they were dismissed from the team, and it cost us.
The question I was really going to ask, I was just joking about that, but that's nice to know. I was going to ask, what advice would you have for young coaches getting started? And maybe that's one of the big pieces of advice about sticking to your rules that you have for everybody.
And making sure your rules are something that are feasible. In other words, just don't come up with a rule for the sake of a rule. Have something that you can definitely, if someone violates the rule, there's punishment for that. You know what I mean? It has to be dealt with. So other than that, I would say make sure your players know who the boss is. Make sure your players know who's running the ship. Make sure your players know they have to understand they do exactly what the coaches tell them to do. And I think you won't have a problem. The best teams I've ever had always had one common thing, one common denominator. All the guys on the team were good teammates. And we preach that to our players all the time. We preach to them about becoming a good teammate. If you got all your guys are good teammates, you really don't have to be great players in order to have a successful year.
Coach, I'm going to go further on that one. When you're teaching those guys to be great teammates, what are some of the specifics that you're pointing out that they do well, or the things that they're not doing well? But round that out for us a little bit more. What does it mean to be a great teammate?
I think you have to, as a college coach, provided you are recruiting, and you don't just take what shows up on opening day. If you're recruiting your players, you have to be very, very diligent as far as looking at them, not only as what they can do on the floor, but how they react to their coaches, how they react to their teammates, how they react to to the referees. You have to do your homework. You have to do your research so that when the kids get on campus, you have a kid who can become a good teammate. And if you do that and create that, then the seniors and the juniors and the sophomores on the team will dictate to the freshmen exactly how they have to behave. So we're always vocal about those kind of things. And then we stress academics with them at the same time. We don't want our guys coming on campus, playing basketball for 4 years and just leaving. We want to make sure that they get a degree, even if it takes extra time. And we emphasize that with them too.
I think that's so key. This is going to be a little bit of a sideways story, but I'll bring it back to what you just said. I went to a concert at the Spectrum Center, which is in Charlotte, a couple of years ago, and had a conversation with an usher there. And she was so helpful, so supportive, helped me to find the restroom. And I was blown away by how helpful she was. And I got out the restroom and I said, how did you do that? Who trained you? What do y'all do in training to be able to be this helpful? And she looked at me, she said, that's just who I am. That's how they hire people here. And I said, oh, so I think to your point, that's such a key point to be able to recruit the guys that you need and the guys the things that you're looking for, and then hold them accountable to that once you get on once they get on campus. I think that's so huge.
Yeah, their ability to play basketball is huge. I mean, you're not going to take a guy just because he's a good guy if he can't play. But if you do your homework as a coach, I think you can really research that, talking to not only the players on his team, but his coaches and other coaches where he competes against. I think you can find out a lot about it.
That's I always tell kids, or told kids when they were getting recruited, that I knew they were getting recruited and stuff. You know, a good coach, he's going to know that you can play already. When he comes to see you, he's going to look at everything else, right? How you warm up, how you react on the bench. He's going to go to the trainer and ask the trainer. He may go to the custodian in the gym and say, what's that kid like? You know, those type of things.
Yeah, that's the right way to do it. I think I've been doing that my whole career.
Coach, before we
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and sometimes it fails and you make a mistake, and then it's up to you to rectify it. You really count on the other kids on your team to help you with that. But we've had guys that we've had to dismiss. Not many, very few. But if it happens, it happens. And if you dismiss somebody, I think it's telling the rest of the team, like, you know, I better straighten up.
Coach, this is I don't know why I thought about this question. We're going to get to your greatest game, or have you tell us about a couple games here in a minute. But what's the best or the coolest or the most exciting venue you've coached in over 52 years?
University of Pennsylvania Palestra. The people that ran the Palestra would give us every year a game or two, and then it would be up to me to bring in an outside opponent, and we would combine our game with the doubleheader. So we played Notre Dame played Villanova. We played Chaney State that day. St. Joe's played somebody. We played Kentucky Wesleyan. We played Tennessee State. We played a number, St. Michael's from Vermont. We played a number of teams over the years in the Palestra, and I think that's probably the best venue. I think might be the best venue in college basketball in the country. I don't know, have you guys ever been there?
Yes, I have been. I've been there several times. We did not play there though.
Okay.
It's no. We played at Temple a couple times. We always played on campus at Temple.
Yeah, well, our teams have played there too. And then in some years, the Big Five schools would play us there. We played Temple there. We played St. Joe's there. We played Villanova there a few times. And it's just an exciting place to be. And your players all know about it because most of our kids are from the area.
Yeah,
Brian, I'm giving it away. I'm giving you a bunny here. What Hall of Fame Division I college basketball coach coached at Chaney State University?
At Chaney State?
In Philadelphia.
I don't know, Chris de Blasio.
I basically gave it away. We already said the school where he coached most famously.
Go ahead, Chris de Blasio.
It said his name.
John Chaney.
John Chaney. Oh, I got you. Okay. Yeah.
Now, the school is not named for him, but
no. It should be.
Yeah.
It should be.
It should, you're right.
We played them a lot. John's teams were really, really difficult to beat. He played that zone.
Yes.
They ran great stuff. And he always took the court with tremendous talent. So, and he was a tough guy to play against. He really was.
Well, that's a venue, the Palestra, that I've yet to visit. Hinkle Fieldhouse might be the closest for me as a mecca of basketball that I've seen a couple of games.
I can see that. Just the movie Hoosiers.
That's right.
It's portrayed in the movie Hoosiers. That's
right. It's
Jimmy Chitwood hitting the jumper at the buzzer. How could it be better than that?
That's right. Well, speaking of that great game, Coach, let's go ahead and get into your greatest game or greatest games. We know you've been a part of a lot of them, and I think it was 1,123 wins, if I'm right. So, Coach, if you could just tell us about your greatest games, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, any game we won is the greatest game that I've ever coached in. So 1,123 times are the greatest games I've ever had. Obviously, the national championship game in Evansville, Indiana, when we beat Tennessee State in 1970, it's the highlight of, I think, any coach. If you have one national championship, which we have, and that would be it. The other games would be the games that we played the Big Five schools. Our players, if they had been recruited by a Big Five school, probably would have gone there. But we were able to play and defeat Villanova a couple times. We beat Temple 3 times. We beat St. Joe's 1 time. And I remember every single bit and every single part of all those games. And we've had a bunch of really other great games, but I'd say the national championship team and playing the Big Five schools and being successful.
What was the best Big Five win do you think you had? Did you coach against Coach Massimino? Or?
Yes, we did. We did a couple times. And we beat them. The one time we beat them back-to-back years, once at the Palestra, Villanova Fieldhouse, actually by the exact same score. So those games were outstanding games. Now, we didn't beat them. We didn't play them when they had their national championship team. But those games were really great basketball games. I remember our guys in the locker room were going crazy after the game was over.
Talk about, I just mentioned Coach Massimino. You already talked about Jay Wright, who you're good friends with. Talk about the Philadelphia coaches and coaching. We just talked about John Chaney. There's others, there's Fran Dunphy, and obviously Steve Lapis had success at Villanova. Coach Martelli, who we've had on the podcast. Jim Lynam, who you went to college with, I believe, right? Who coached in the NBA, high school. I'm sorry. Talk about the Philadelphia coaching tree and that camaraderie that Philadelphia coaches have with each other.
Yeah, it's really something you can almost touch it. That's how real it is. It all started, in my opinion, with Jack Ramsey.
I forgot.
Yeah, when he was at St. Joe's. At the time, When he was coaching St. Joe, Hall of Famer. When he was at the time in the Big Five, Harry Litwack, Hall of Famer. Chuck Daly at the University of Pennsylvania, Hall of Famer. John Chaney later on, Hall of Famer. Tom Gola coached LaSalle, Hall of Famer. So right down the line, they've had such tremendous coaches. And at one time, you couldn't get into a Big Five game because they were all being played at the Palestra. And those were sold out as soon as they put the tickets on sale. Just a mob scene. So it's the Big Five. And then when Coach McKinney, Jack McKinney, played for Coach Ramsey and coached under him, actually coached textile for 1 year. I was his assistant for 1 year. Jack came there and then did a great job at St. Joe's. And then you know what happened when he went to the pros? He had the Lakers, who won an NBA championship. He was not there at the time, but also the guy took over for him is another St. Joe guy named Paul Westhead, and they won the NBA championship in Philadelphia when Magic Johnson, as a rookie, like 42 points and 15 assists or something like that. So right down the list, Rolly Massimino at Villanova, Jack Kraft at Villanova, Chuck Daly at Penn, Bob Weinauer at Penn. You could go right all through the entire Big Five.
The names that you're running down it's simply incredible, and I reference this podcast episode about every other episode when we have Coach Phil Martelli on, as Chris was talking about episode 69. And the thing that blew me away from listening to him and is blowing me away from listening to you, Coach, is just that it's about the game, that it's about relationships, it's about the kids, and it's really, and you haven't really said this verbatim, but I'm just hearing it. It's about growing the game and taking care of each other, and it just sounds like just a neat coaching fraternity, everybody looking out for each other.
Exactly. The game is over. Not only did you shake the other guy's hands, but some of those guys you might end up having a beer with later. That's how close everybody was. There was no animosity. The players played, the coaches coached, and the fans loved it. So it's still there. It's still there. But Jay's teams have really dominated. Back when I'm talking about, when Ramsey and Harry Litwack and then John Chaney, and when they were all there, the games were all wars. But Jay has completely dominated the Big Five in the last X number of years. I watched exactly. I watched the game tonight, St. Joe LaSalle at LaSalle, and LaSalle was killing them. Next thing you know, St. Joe's killing them. And St. Joe's come back to cut it to like 5 at the end. And that's typical Big Five basketball.
Yeah, we had a friend of mine, Matt Bloom, who was an assistant at LaSalle for a couple of years, and he talked about a game when they beat Butler about 8 or 9 years ago, and he talked about being in the Big Five and just what it means. And Philadelphia basketball, it's such a great scene. It's I live right outside of New York, grew up outside of New York, and everyone talks about New York basketball and what it means, and it does. But Philadelphia, the city of Philadelphia, and what it's meant to basketball is just as important. You've went through the list of those coaches. Coach, I want to ask you this. Brian asked you this earlier, kind of, the changes you've seen in the game. What's something you would like to see maybe changed in the game today? And not necessarily a rule or stylistically, or what's a problem you see with the game of basketball today that maybe we could fix?
Well, there's so many different ways of playing the game. But I'm not sure you can fix that. That's up to the individual coach. I think the game is at its peak right now. I think with the different rules that we have now, I don't think we should be doing anything more like widening the lane. That's been talked about. I don't see any reason for that. I don't know. I think the more the NCAA does to educate the referees, I think the better the game will become. Each year I get this film from the head of the officials, and I watch it because we're supposed to and we have to, and I enjoy it. And it talks about how you should work and call the different games. And then the season starts and they're not called that way. And, like they're talking about chucking and low post play and freedom of movement. The game starts and you don't see it. So I think one of the things that should be helped is for the officials to go through more rigorous training as far as they want the universally to call the games. I think that's really key because you never know from what game to the next how the game's going to be called. And I think we need to get some more uniform way of refereeing the basketball game.
Yeah, that's true even at the high school level too. and it's harder, these guys that we have coming in.
I don't really blame those guys.
Right.
I mean, they're some of the guys are making a nice living, but guys that work our games, I'm not sure what they get, but they're not getting what Division I coaches are getting, like Division I referees are getting.
Right.
So I think, but still, you have to be good at your craft if you're going to advance. And sometimes you guys come into the game and they just don't have the same attitude that they should have, because the game means a lot to myself and to my players and to the other coach and his players. It's got to be the same thing with the officials. So I think the important thing to do would be to educate them more than they are doing now. Of course, all of them have other jobs, so it's not like their first line of employment. I mean, it's not like the NBA guys where that's what they do for a living. These guys all have jobs. They're coming from their job and they're going to work a game. But I still think they have to get better at it.
Yeah, I agree. And I know our high school guys down here in South Carolina are doing the best they can. We have some really good ones and guys that are, like you say, just kind of up and coming and just working on it. And, it's that's a job that, Chris knows this about me, Coach. I love officiating basketball games. It's so much fun. Back to the team camp days when I was in South Carolina, just absolutely loved it. And I had the chance to do it a couple of weeks ago with, we had some miscommunication, long story short, got to officiate some basketball here a few weeks ago. And it was really fun and reminded me how hard of a job it really is.
Oh, it really is. It's really hard to do. There's no question about it. With the way young guys are now, with the weight room and the work that they put in the weight room and their athleticism, the game is played above the rim. What is goaltending? What isn't goaltending? What is a charge? What is not a charge? But I think they have to be lectured better, or not lectured, but they have to be taught better. And what is and what isn't. More, if they can get the same. They're never going to have the same one guy rep exactly the same way as another guy. But if they can get closer to being, calling the game the same way, I think it'd be better for the whole game.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that. Coach, we'd like to wrap this up with sort of a fun question. This may be hard for you though. You've been coaching, like we said, almost 60 years. If I talk to a player that played for you on the team in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and recently, what's the one thing they would say that Coach Magee says over and over again? Is there one phrase or saying that you've maybe said throughout the years that when players are sitting around having a reunion and they're doing their Coach Magee impression, what's the phrase they're saying?
Well, I'm sure they do, first of all, because a lot of these guys now I play golf with, some of the guys that played in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and they do it right on the golf course. But I don't know if they have just one thing that's popular. I think it's more the way I express myself. You know what I mean? So some of the stuff maybe isn't as clean as it should be. But I think what they would say is that Coach is fair. He's tough, but he's fair. And the one thing that I've been known to do is not play a lot of guys. So the phrase is, if you play for Coach Magee, you better have a great pair of lungs or you better have a hard ass because you're going to be on the bench or you're going to be in the game. So I think that might be the one thing that they might say. We had a kid last year, led all divisions, Division 1, 2, and 3 in minutes played. He averaged over 40 minutes a game.
Wow.
I see no reason to take a kid out if he's one of our better players. That's what they would probably say it. If they were one of the starters, they would be like, I love the way you coach. If they're off the bench, they would be like, gee, I wish he had played me more. That type of
Coach, the year Will Chamberlain averaged 50 points. He averaged over 48 minutes a game, by the way.
I made reference to that the other day. We were just talking about that, 48 points a game. And I was at most of those games, averaging 50 points a game. Give me a break.
It seems pretty simple to me. If a kid's playing well, why take him out? It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And if you need a rest, go to bed.
That's right. I have a feeling that you've said that one to many a player.
Without question.
Just have.
I'm tired. Go to bed. And that's at night. Go to bed. It's been a great ride, and we're still enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, we Coach, we just can't thank you enough. The second winningest all-time coach in college basketball history, a Hall of Famer. It's been a real honor, a real privilege to have you on the Greatest Games. Really, really appreciate you coming on the show.
I enjoyed both you guys. Well done. Very nice show. Time flew by.
That's right. It did. It does means we have to bring it back after a few more wins next season.
Yeah.
But,
okay, I'll be more than happy to.
That sounds good. We'll go ahead and wrap this one up for my co-host, Chris de Blasio. I'm Brian Rosefield, and thank you for listening to this episode of The Greatest Games.